The speaker of this session is Dr. Hossain. I request him to come here. And he will be speaking on Muslim political thought in colonial Bengal. And this session will be chaired by Dr. Sohel Aziz sir. Request Sohel sir to come here. And I request Tanya Parvin to welcome the chair and speaker as well with the conference. I request Samil to give a brief introduction of the chairs and the speaker.
Thank you, sir. Assalamualaikum and good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank BASE for giving me the opportunity to introduce my dear professor, Dr. Sohel Aziz, who will chair this session. Dr. Sohel Aziz is an assistant professor in the Department of English, Aliah University. He completed his PhD from Aligarh Muslim University and joined in this department in 2016. Before joining here, he also served as an assistant professor in IMS Engineering College, Ghaziabad, Rajkumar Goel Institute of Technology, Ghaziabad, and SPS Government College. Since then, he is actively engaged in research and advanced studies. He has presented papers in several national and international seminars and has published many research papers in reputed international journals and anthologies, and has also delivered a special lecture in several occasions as a resource person. His major interest areas are modern and postmodern novel, modern and postmodern drama, literary theory, Dalit literature, feminist theatre, postcolonial literature, marginalized literature, Asian literature, diaspora studies, gender studies, Anthropocene literature, African American literature, cultural studies, disability studies, literature and human rights, and urban studies. And now we are honored to have Dr. XIII Hossain with us today as our distinguished speaker. Dr. XIII Hossain is working as an assistant professor in the Department of History, Aliah University, Kolkata. He has completed his higher studies from Aligarh Muslim University. He has been the Maulana Azad National Fellowship awarded by UGC. He has also qualified NET and SET examination. His 8 years of specialization centers around the history of Indian Muslims in colonial India. He has published his research in many national, international, and UGC care listed and peer-reviewed journals. Besides, he has also contributed chapters in 2 edited volumes. He has also delivered several invited lectures in different academic programs and is actively engaged with teaching and research. Now I will hand over the session to Sohel sir for further proceedings. Thank you, sir.
Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon to all of you. First of all, it's my august duty to thank the BASE organization and the collaborating colleges for giving me opportunities to speak on a theme which I have chosen as the history of political thought of Bengali Muslims in colonial India, a reappraisal. A reappraisal, thereby I meaning that this is an area which I haven't been, this is not my the area focus of area, although my focus research area, the center of my research area is the Muslim history of the colonial India. So in this connection I have tried, in fact I registered for this conference in order to learn more about the Bengali identity or Bengali thought. So luckily I was invited that you have to speak and I chose this topic as a political thought, evolution of the political thought and different misappropriation of the political thought in terms of Bengali Muslims that has been in the different secondary sources that are largely in English, as I am yet to unable to read the Bengali script, so I haven't consulted the primary source. Whatever my discussion and observations are, these are the primary observations and these are largely based on the secondary sources, few prominent sources that has been written on the Bengali Muslim political thought. To begin with, the history of the Bengali Muslim political thought, in fact, is a very fascinating story. There has been different strands of political thought. The Bengali Muslims, they are always engaged in the politics, and they have gone through the different standards. First, there was in different strands there, the nationalist strand, then the separatist strand was also there. They helped in creation of the nation on the name of in the name of religion. Then they weren't satisfied with that. Then they created the nation in the name of a language. So this is a very fascinating story, and it has different versions and different phases of political thought. When we connect the political thought of the Bengali Muslims and political thought of the Indian Muslims, we find there are several similarities in terms of the understanding or in terms of the interpretation of the Muslim political thought. If you look at the Muslim political thought over the entire India, there is a generalizations, there are misappropriations, there are misinterpretation in terms of the Muslim political thought, largely based on the identity of the Indian Muslims. The term Indian Muslims or the term Indian Muslim identity, this is a byproduct of the British colonialism. And in terms of understanding the history of Muslim political thought of entire Indian Muslims as well as the Bengali Muslims, the concept of a monolithic identity has been largely pushed forward, that the entire Muslim community is a single block of identity. They think very uniformly. There is no sense of diversity among them. There is no personal identities or sub-identities which can vary from class, from caste, from regions, from in fact the sectarian issues that has been. So it has been generalized in a similar manner in the political thought of Indian Muslims has been generalized. And this generalization of Indian Muslim community, I have told you that it is largely based on the concept of the monolithic identity. In fact, if you look at the entire history of the Muslim colonial period, you won't find a single evidence that the entire Muslim community of India was on a single stand, except one Babri issues. And in fact, nowadays there are several a section among the Muslim community who in fact support the demolition of Babri mosque. So I haven't seen a single evidence in the entire history of the Indian Muslims that they have been a single block or they have a single opinion on a single occasion in the entire Indian history, except Babri and Shah Banu case to a great extent that also became. However, if you look at the Bengali Muslim political thought, right from the beginning, I have tried to conceptualize or to understand or to decode the political thought of Bengali Muslims in three phases. The first phase is the politics which made inroads through the socio-religious reform movements that happened in the Bengal. Most importantly, the two important movements, one was the Wahhabi movement and another was the Faraizi movement. These were the two movements. The Wahhabi movement has its origin in the northern India. In Bengal, it was a later production, but Faraizi was a very indigenous movement of the Bengal that centered around the socio-religious reformation initially, but later on it took a political turn, or it took a political nature. The second phase, which I have tried to understand, is the late 19th century when the Bengali Muslims grew in size, and with the expansion of education that defined their interest, and that with the development of education, their political interests were defined, and they tried to involve themselves in the several politics. In this period, you will find the different strands of politics among the Bengali Muslims. There were nationalists also. There were some who were very pro-British. There were some there were separatist tendencies also. There is no denying the fact that Muslims were all nationalists. This is a very common perception. The Muslim always try to project that all were nationalists. No, there was a separatist tendency that was in other communities also. There was also pan-Islamism in the Bengal. For example, in 1882, Jamaluddin Afghani, the most important and most universal proponent of pan-Islamism, you can say, he visited Calcutta, and one of the major proponent of the pan-Islamism in Bengal was the Pandit Mashhad. He was the professor of Sanskrit and Bengali in Aliah Madrasa. He was one of the proponent of pan-Islamism in that concept. And the last phase which I have tried to understand and I have largely ignored is that from post 1937, the Congress ministry, after that the formation of Congress ministry, how the things changed in entire India and how a separatist tendencies grew in large number, and then that finally culminated into the division of the country. The first part, the political thought of Bengali Muslim in the first phase that was initiated in the wake of religious reform movements, it has been argued that this is the base where the roots of separatism among the Muslims grew. In fact, yesterday the keynote speaker, if I am not wrong, because I cannot completely fathom the Bengali, the entire keynote speaker was speaking in the Bengali, but as I could fathom that he argued that the Wahhabi movement and Faraizi movement, these were the two movements from where the separatism or the fundamental orthodoxy or conservatism began within the Bengali Muslim. So this idea is the generalized idea, and this is in terms of Indian Muslims, and this is being pushed to the Bengali Muslim also. If we decode the entire Wahhabi movement, the Wahhabi movement was made anti-communal by Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. He argued that Wahhabi movement was against the Sikh. But Sir Syed Ahmad Khan was arguing, and he was writing in a time period when he was trying to make a reapproachment between the British and Muslims. So if in that particular point of time, if he would have argued that Wahhabi movement was against the British government, that would have again led to the hampering the relationship that Sir Syed was trying to build between the British and Muslim. The second important movement is the Faraizi movement. This movement, if you will decode this movement was anti-Hindu zamindar. It was not the anti-Hindu movement. It's a more important thing. And this was more movement which was peasant oriented, and it was revolving, or it happened towards around the economic issues. And you will find several examples that where in fact some Hindu peasants were also, if they were not joining the Faraizi, but they were very neutral. It was all again. In fact, there is many evidences which prove that the Muslim zamindars, they procured the fatwas against the Faraizis, that the Faraizis, they are doing anti-Islamic things, they are doing violence. So how can a movement that is being against which the fatwa is being procured by those Muslims has been can be traced back to the separatism. Besides that, one of the important thing or one of the important aspect of the 19th century reform movement, if we see, is that the entire movements in the 19th century, whether in the Muslim community or in the non-Muslims community, were carried within the ambit of religion, within the connotations of the religion. For example, take the movement of Rajaram Mohan Roy and compare it with the movement of Young Bengal movement. Rajaram Mohan Roy tried to initiate or try to push his movement within the ambit of religion. That's why he succeeded for a long term. But if you look at the Young Bengal movement, they were very antagonist to the religion, and they met a very sudden decline, a very instant decline. So that is also one thing that should be kept, an identity, a Muslim identity, that was a bit of consolidation that one can see, that the religious issues were very promoted at that end. But in the last phases of Faraizi movement, you will also see, in fact in the Wahhabi movement, the political things dominated the religious issues, and the religious things were all kept aside, and they were largely pushed towards the oblivion. So that is one important thing which I tried to there were several, if you look at the Bengalis Muslims contribution in the political aspect, there were several, as I already told, there were nationalist, pro-British, rationalist, humanist, socialist, pan-Islamist trends. There were Orthodox Muslims also. That stressed the fact that the Muslims' political thought, they cradled the diverse ideology. For example, if you look at the nationalists, there were several people like Sayyid Nausher Ali, Abdul Hayat, Muhammad Akram Khan, Muzammil Haq, Mir Musharraf Hussain, Ismail Hussain Siraj, Sayyid Imdad Ali, Ashrafuddin Ahmad, Jahangir Kabir, Humayun Kabir. These were the different peoples who were the nationalists and pro-congress who were doing. There was some rational approach also. A liberal trend that was started among the Bengali Muslims was the most important contribution that was played by the Muslim Sahitya Samaj that was founded in Dhaka in 1926. They promoted the liberal ideas among the Muslims, and the most important personalities that was with this liberal humanist ideas were Muhammad Lutfur Rahman, Qazi Imdadul Haq, Begum Ruqayya, Qazi Abdul Wadud, Abdul Hussain, Sayyid Wazid Ali, Rizaul Karim, and Professor Amjad sir mentioned about the Dilawar Hussain. Dilawar Hussain Mirza was one of the greatest proponent of believing that the idea of nation will always be a secular. The nation should never promote the religious ideas. He was one of the great proponent of the secular state. We have socialist or Marxist idea, we can say Muzaffar Ahmad, Abdul Halim, Qazi Nazrul Islam, although he officially didn't join the Communist Party, but he promoted the ideas that were very akin to the socialism. Abdul Razzaq Khan. Even there were some women who were associated with the communist movement, communist politics. Shamsun Nisa Karim, Rabia Begum, Maqsuda Begum. These were the several things. About the pan-Islamism, I already mentioned that Pandit Riyazuddin Ahmad Mashhadi, he was a professor of Bengali and Sanskrit in Aliah Madrasa. Maulana Akram Khan, Maulana Abdul Mansoor Ahmad, these were the people who were promoting the idea of pan-Islamism, that the entire Muslim community in the world, the global concept of Ummah, they were promoting that aspect. They have a pro-British stand also, in which you will see Nawab Abdul Latif, Sayyid Amir Ali, who were inspired by Sir Sayyid Ahmad Khan and who were advocating the modern education, and they were trying to cooperate with the British in order to get the deteriorating conditions of Muslims better through the modern education, through the cooperation with the British, because there was a sense of animosity among the Muslim against the British, and everything that was coming from the British was rejected. Whether it was education, whether it was reformation, anything that was coming from the British, that was outwardly rejected because of the political animosity as well as the fear for the religious conversion. So that was one of the aspects which led the Muslim graph decline in the employment, in the education, and that put them behind the race in which the Hindus find it comfortable, because there was although in the Mughal Empire the entire Muslims were not flourishing, there were only some sections, those were enjoying the privileges, but there was the psychological that the Muslim Empire, that Mughal Empire is a Muslim, although there was nothing Muslim about the Mughal Empire except the rulers being the Muslims. So this psychology also led that the British are our political enemies, and there was no change for the Hindus. They have just the change of the masters. They were doing the work under the Mughals, they started doing under the British, it led them to prosper. So that thing was also one of the hindrance towards the Muslims, which was tried to be filled by these pro-British Bengali Muslim political thinkers or intellectuals. There are several factors, that I have tried to, see that what were the different factors that led to the development of political thought that impacted the evolution of the political thought in the Muslim. The first important is that the political thought of the Bengali Muslim was influenced by the political necessities of the time. There was a political necessity, the Muslims were lagging behind, economic necessities were there. The political thought process that prevailed among Indian Muslims or as the Bengali Muslims, it was a part of the larger Muslim identity, because the Bengali Muslims too come under the purview of the Indian Muslims identity that was pushed forward in the wake of colonialism, because the British colonialism, they started the trend of representation on the basis of religion. In the first time, if you see in the medieval time, the representation was largely on the basis of the origins, identity of origins, from where a person is. Then you will see that in the Mughals there were Irani section, Durrani section, and the Indian Sheikhzadas. But the British were the first who tried to, set up the representation issue on the basis of religion. There is also the role of Hindu elite also played an important role that irked the Muslim community, or that led to in fact development of a separatist trend. Hindu elite has also some sort of contribution, because there were several Hindu elites who were writing novels and poems, for example by Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, in which Muslims were hegemonized, or the distortion of the Muslims' character took place. The Muslims were, the terms like Jogon, Militia, Yavana, the foreigners were used for the Muslims. There were several paintings of the imaginary characters where the Muslims women were falling in love with the Hindu woman, that was portrayed in the writing. So these all things also, Gorakshani Sabha that was founded by Dayanand Saraswati. against the cow slaughter. That was also one of the major issues. Although there were several Muslims who supported that Muslims should not eat the cow or they should not slaughter the cow. The most important was Mir Musharraf Hussain. He wrote the book Go Jeevani that countered that idea that Muslims should avoid the cow slaughter. But there was not a complete that Hindu elite or Hindu writers were writing against the Muslim. There were some also who represented very progressive ideas and influenced the Muslim thought, like Grish Chandra Sen. He translated the Quran in Bengali. Budev Mukhopadhyay, he was important. Michael Madhusandat, he wrote very favorably towards the Muslim. Then important influence of the Bengali Muslim political thought is the foreign influences, as I already talked about. Jamaluddin Afghani, he was the proponent of pan-Islamism. Then the influences from the northern India, Sir Sayyid Ahmad Khan's influence. Then from the League influence was also, Muslim League influence was also there. The economic issues also paved the way for the, largely for those who were the pro-British in their stand. Their major contention was the economic issues of the Muslims, that Muslims are lagging and it's only with the cooperation of the British, that's why Muslims can progress. And this idea of pro-British stance of Muslims has also been misappropriated as the sense of separatism. Similar with Sir Sayyid Ahmad Khan, he didn't join the Indian National Congress because he said that Muslims should prioritize education rather than the politics. Then Sir Sayyid Ahmad Khan was branded as the separatism as a separatist in the later tendencies. Thanks to the Pakistani scholars also, because they were trying to link Sir Sayyid Ahmad Khan in Pakistan because they need an intellectual legacy. Any idea always need an intellectual legacy. So they tried to link Sir Sayyid Ahmad Khan with the Pakistan, while the scholars here they tried to link the Sir Sayyid Ahmad Khan with the communalism or separatism. So that was also one of them. Now, what I have read or what I have, the reappraisal of it and what I find that what is the issues or what are the problems. This is my preliminary observation. I can be wrong. That what is the problem in understanding or the historiography of Muslim political thought, what has been written in the secondary English sources, is that one of the argument is that the Bengali Muslim political thought has been enabled to develop a distinct political thought. And whatever political instincts were among the Bengali Muslims, it was largely because of the influences from the outside. So this is one of the problematic. This is the Pradeep Kumar Lahiri, the Bengali Muslim political thought. This is a major book. This is his argument. He said that Bengali Muslim didn't have any indigenous political idea. Whatever political instincts they have, it was largely because of the foreign influences, either from the northern India, either from the outside, or either from the present-day Pakistan. But if you look at the Faraizi movement in fact was indigenous political movement and political activity, and Faraizi movement was very specific and very different movement. This was the movement where the first time the concept of parallel government started. This was the first movement where the concept of non-cooperation movement, which Gandhi later on utilized, the no-tax movement that was initiated by the Faraizi. So these are the early activities which I argue that that was not the case, that the Bengali had their own political identities, and they, according to the circumstances and according to the spaces here, they tried to, they had their own political thought. The next thing is that that the Bengali Muslim political thought is a single blend of idea. The diverse opinion which I highlighted, they were ignored. In fact, among these diverse opinions, you will see there were several ulemas who were pro-British and there were several modern educated who were orthodox. That's why I started with the concept that the Bengali political thought is a very fascinating story. You will see the Maulana Karamat Ali Janpuri is advocating very strictly about the modern education. And Pandit Mashhadi, he is a professor in Aliah, and he is propagating the concept of pan-Islamism. Maulana is promoting the idea of modern education, and a professor is promoting the idea of pan-Islamism. So that is one thing. One another important issues with the understanding of Muslim political thought is that few have tried to project that whatever the instincts of separatism among the Bengali Muslim was, it was largely because of the influence of Persian and Urdu Persian and Urdu. And Bengali Muslims did not try to link themselves with the Bengali language. That's why they have fallen into the trap of separatist tendencies, because Persian and Urdu are Arabic, those traditions. They had some Islamic hegemony and they were inching towards the separatism. That is one another. In fact, when the Muslims tried to write largely in Bengali, that has been also criticized, that that was the Musalmani Bengali that has more Persianized influence rather than the Sanskritized Bengali. So that is also one important peculiar thing with this. I think my time is getting up, so I'll conclude. There was also one important, the rural-urban dichotomy is very important when we have to understand the Muslim political thought in Bengal. The rural political thought was very different and urban political thought was very different. So we have to look carefully over the spaces in it. So to conclude, I can argue that the Bengali Muslim political thought in India did not revolve around the consolidated or single block of Muslim identity, but incorporated diverse ideologies cutting across many sub-identities. In fact, it was not separatism in the politics, but it was in the separatism in the social, economic and religious sphere, mixed with the conscious of development of self among the Muslims that led to the political separatism, which led to the division of the country. Moreover, it was the result of different cultural orientations, because everybody which was coming from their everybody was coming from different cultural background or different cultural education. For example, the Ashraf class, they idealize their cultural origins outside the Bengal. But when we see the vernacular intelligentsia which developed among the Bengali Muslims, they saw their cultural worldview within the Bengali space. The socio-economic backgrounds also needs to be taken care of, urban-rural connections and relation with the state. And the most important thing that is the personal and the political decision. You will see the A.K. Fazlul Haq, he tried to form the government in 1937 with the Congress, but when Congress rejected, then he turned to the Muslim League. Then in 1941, he again turned towards the Congress. So there were the personal ambitions or the political ambitions of the political personalities that also made a great deal of effect in the defining the political thought of the Muslim identity. And there was the constant dichotomy of sacred and secular, argued by Mashattarin that the Bengali identity was constantly shifting between sacred and secular identities, and it is very complex identities in the first place to understand. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Ishtiaq Hussain, sir, for presenting such a panoramic view on the British Bengali Muslim political thoughts, its evolution, categorization in 3 phases, and for the elaboration of all the points. Because of lack of time, I would like to open the session, and we can take only one question for this particular session since we are running short of time. So, any one question if anyone wants to ask. Yes. Let me give the opportunity to Aziz, who is another stalwart here.
So my question is, because the previous session was on OBC, affirmative action, caste. With regard to the political thought of Bengali Muslims, especially the emergence of I think whether there was caste consciousness at that time, because we know that Bengali Muslims had to get the Sharafatnama to get admission in the Calcutta Madrasa. Especially the Ashraf Atraf was already highlighted in the work of Rafiuddin Ahmad very clearly, even before colonial census was done. So do you think that kind of this social formation actually impacted the Bengali Muslim political thought?
Well, I don't see any, a great influence of caste in terms of Bengali Muslim political thought. As far as the secondary sources which I have read, it was largely on the basis of class. Class-based did matter. Moreover, the peasants and then the zamindars, that issue was also there, and the rural-urban dichotomy was there. Class, I believe, as per my readings, wasn't such a strong issue in the Bengali Muslim political thought, even if we compare to the political thought in the northern India. That's
Thank you, Adil. Thank you, sir. Regarding this particular question, I would like to draw the attention that though we tend to believe that Bengali Muslim in the earliest, in the earlier colonial period or even pre-colonial period were not divided in different kinds of a class or there isn't any kind of a hierarchy. But my reading has shown that Bengali Muslims are all very much divided. Ashraf that was considered as the highest class, and then Atraf that was considered the lowest class. And there is a huge difference between these two classes, Ashraf and Atraf. So apart from this, this session is indeed very interesting, providing a very panoramic discussion. And I would like to comment a lot, but the thing is, we are running short of time. I would just like to point out one certain aspect of, the question raised by Richard M. Eaton, who, when talking about the lacuna between the 13th century to 18th century, Muslim heritage, that why there was so silence about this particular, Muslim heritage from the conquest of Bakhtiar, and then towards the fall of Plassey. In this particular period, we find a huge lacuna in understanding the rise of the Muslim political thought. And it says that even at this particular moment, the political thought cannot be seen in terms of raising the political awareness. Rather, it was a kind of a social awareness. And instead, we see this is the era when we find the conversion is in the most important case. The conversion of the Hindus, lower class Hindus especially, coming to the Muslim class. And the question that Richard M. Eaton has put down that if do we have at the time the kind of the meaning we associated with the conversion at this particular present day, and their understanding of conversion, we have a huge difference. But how that conversion has impacted in the later period the Muslim political identity. Second notion that I would like to throw a question to the session to think over this, because we lack the time of discussion. The question is that in the late colonial period, we see the three premium Muslim leaders in Bengal, Fazlul Haq, and then Nasiruddin Saab, and then we also see Sohel Saab. Despite the presence of these three stalwarts, the Muslim figures, what are the different reasons? You see, one thing I would like to draw your attention here that I have forgotten the exact year, someone please help me, 1941 or 42, in the Punjab province, we see the collaboration government of the Muslim League and Shiv Sena. We see the collaboration government. And at that time, 1941-42 election, it shows that in Bengal, almost the Muslim League is in a very negligible position. But at the same moment, within the 3 or 4 years of span, when we see the 1946 election, at that time we see the rise of the Muslim League in such a huge way. We have a lacuna in this particular period to define the political identity of the Muslims. We cannot ignore the period from the rise of the Fazlul Haq and the end of Sohel. Okay, so we need to understand this particular lacuna, which I believe that we still need a lot of research in this era. That what happened at this particular period? That is it just because of the internal campaigning of the Shiv Sena or RSS or Bajrang Dal at the time going on in Kolkata, and it creates the polarization, or we Muslims are also somewhere at fault in creating our own identity. And why all of a sudden we start losing our faith in the Congress government, and then we start associating ourselves with the Muslim League, and the demand for the East Pakistan or Pakistan, it was created. This is a huge lacuna that I find. And saying all these things, I hope that this session is a very important one in understanding the Muslim political thought in terms of history and tracing the history, panoramic view, presenting from 3 different stages. And I thank you, the organizers of BEST, for giving me this opportunity to present my view as well as to chair this session. Thanks a lot.